Hello and welcome to another KeyCast episode of the Languages Pedagogy Podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you here, tuning in from classrooms, cars, cafes, offices, study corners, or maybe during one of those reflective late night walks with your favorite headphones on. Wherever you are, thank you for choosing to spend your time with me. Today's topic is one I've been meaning to unpack for a long time already. Not just because it's pedagogically rich and backed by tons of research, but because when done right, it has the power to completely transform the way people learn languages. I'm talking about task-based learning, yes, or TBL as a short, and more specifically, what it really looks like in the real world. Let me say this up front. Task-based learning is not a buzzword, all right? It's not a trend that will fade with the next educational fad. It's a philosophy, a method, and a mindset as well that actually goes beyond vocabulary lists, grammar drills, and scripted dialogues. It's about using language as a tool to complete real meaningful tasks. And today, we're not just going to define it or glance over the theory. No, we're going to dig deep into the real world application. What does TBL look like in a bustling public school in Sao Paulo? In a private language center in Tokyo? In a refugee integration class in Berlin? In a visual classroom with students from 3 different time zones? We're going to look at how teachers make it work, because that's what really matters. What learners actually think about it, the challenges that come with it, or with the implementation, and most importantly, the transformational potential it holds when learning becomes not just a set of exercises, but a purposeful, lived experience. So, grab a cup of tea or coffee, or maybe just a notebook. And let's dive into the world of task-based learning in the real world. Let's get started.
Woo! Let's go!
What is task-based learning really? Let's begin with the heart of the matter. What is it? If you read a methodology book or taking a course in language teaching, you probably encounter a tidy definition along the lines of task-based learning is a communicative approach where learners use language to carry out meaningful tasks. That's a good start. But let's go beyond the definitions. Imagine this. Instead of teaching vocabulary related to travel and then having students fill in the blanks with words like passport, airport, or suitcase, you give your students a real-life problem. For example, you're organizing a trip for a group of international volunteers. You need to research destinations, find affordable flights and accommodations, prepare a travel plan, and pitch it to the group in a simulated meeting. That, my wonderful listeners, is task-based learning. It's about shifting the focus from language as the end goal to language as a means to an end. The end being a purposeful communicative task. In other words, language becomes the tool, not the target. And ironically, this shift often leads to better language acquisition than traditional methods. Tasks can range from planning an event, solving a problem, designing a brochure, writing a review, conducting an interview, or debating a current issue. They're rich, authentic, and learner-centered. And in many ways, they mirror the kind of communication we engage in daily, whether in our professional, academic, or personal lives. But here's the catch. TBL is only as effective as its implementation. And that's where things get real. From the textbook to the street, real world implementation. Let's zoom in on some real classrooms, okay? I want to take you to three very different places and three very different realities to see how TBL plays out beyond the theory. Here we go with case 1. Bogotá, Colombia, the Social Impact Project. In a public secondary school in Bogotá, a passionate teacher named Mariana has her students work on what she calls mini social impact project. Her 10th grade English class is diverse, economically, socially, linguistically, and rather than stick to a rigid curriculum, she organizes the semester around a central task, designing a campaign to address a local issue entirely in English. Students choose their topics: pollution, bullying, animal welfare, unemployment, and then dive into research, interview, script writing, video production, and finally, a public presentation. The result? Authentic use of English across all 4 skills. Students aren't just learning about environmental vocabulary, they're using it to try and change their environment. Mariana told me in an interview, when they speak in English for this kind of purpose, they don't just memorize, they internalize it. It becomes personal. Now, let's jump into case 2. Seoul, South Korea, startup simulation in a language institute. At a high-end language institute in Seoul, adult learners preparing for international careers go through a 12-week TBL module called Startup Challenge. The task? Form a team, come up with a product idea, build a mock business plan, and present it to a panel, of course in English. The facilitator, Mr. Park, acts more like a coach than a teacher. Grammar is addressed only when it gets in the way of communication. Vocabulary is learned on the go. The learners are motivated because the task mimics real business environment. It's fast-paced, collaborative, and high stakes. And the learners, well, they come out of it with not just better English, but better communication skills, better confidence, and a sense of having done something real. Now, let's keep going to the next case. Case 3. Online TBL with refugee learners in Europe. Now, let's move into the virtual space in an EU-funded online platform for displaced learners. A team of volunteers educators design a TBL course to support refugees learning the local language. One of the core tasks: prepare for a job interview. Learners create a CV, write a cover letter, and rehearse interviews using role plays on Zoom. The learners aren't learning polite expressions from my list, of course. They're rehearsing their own stories, their own strengths, and they're doing it with purpose: to get a job, to regain control of their lives. That's the real power of TBL. Why it works. The science behind task-based learning. Now that we've seen what TBL looks like in real context, let's ask, why does it work? Research in second language acquisition, SLA, supports several key principles that TBL aligns with. So here we have comprehensible input plus interaction. Tasks provide opportunities for real negotiation of meaning. Output hypothesis. Learners need to produce language to refine their skills, not just consume it. Noticing hypothesis. When learners realize gaps in their output during tasks, they become more attentive to language forms, right? Engagement. Tasks simulate cognitive, emotional, and social engagement, all critical for retention and fluency. And here's the kicker. Studies consistently shows that learners in TBL classrooms outperform their peers in traditional classrooms in terms of fluency, communication strategies, and confidence. But let's be honest, all right? It's not always easy. The challenges of task-based learning in the real world. Let's talk about the elephant in the room now, the obstacles. First, curriculum constraints. Many institutions still follow a textbook-driven, grammar-heavy curriculum. TBL doesn't always fit neatly into standardized tests or rigid pacing guides. Teachers often have to find creative ways to sneak it in. 2. Assessment. How do you grade a group task fairly? How do you assess language growth when every student contributes differently? These are real challenges that require a shift in mindset. From marking right, wrong answers to evaluating communication, collaboration, and improvement. 3. Teacher training. Many teachers weren't trained in how to facilitate tasks. They may default to traditional methods or fear losing control of the classroom. TBL requires a new skill set: scaffolding, monitoring, adapting, and most of all, letting go. 4. Learner resistance. Let's be real on this one. Not every student loves group work. Some want grammar rules. Others are afraid of making mistakes. Part of implementing TBL means creating a culture of trust, where learners feel safe to take risks and see the value in purposeful communication. Making it work. Tips for teachers. So, how do we bring TBL into our own classrooms? Realistically. Start small. One 45-minute task can plant the seed. It doesn't have to be a massive project. Make it real. Choose tasks that are relevant to learners' lives. Booking a ticket, giving advice, solving a local problem. Focus on the process. The task isn't just about the final product. It's about the language that emerges during planning, negotiating, revising. Don't pre-teach everything. Let learners struggle a bit. The gaps become learning opportunities sometimes, right? Reflect. Always debrief the task. What worked? What new language emerged? What could be improved? Language learning as live practice. Here's the deeper truth behind all this. TBL isn't just about language. It's about preparing people to function in the world, to collaborate, problem solve, express themselves, and act meaningfully through language. When we teach through task, we're not just preparing students for the next test. We're preparing them for the next conversation with a colleague, the next job interview, the next chance to help someone or make a difference, and to do it in another language. And that's not just methodology, that's life preparation. So whether you're a teacher trying to breathe new life into your classroom, a student tired of endless grammar drills, or an education leader rethinking curriculum models, task-based learning offers a way forward that's dynamic, human, and real. Because at the end of the day, language is not meant to live on worksheets. It's meant to live in the world. And thank you for spending this time with me. I hope today's episode gave you insights, reflections, and maybe even a spark to try something new in your practice. As always, I love to hear your thoughts, your stories, your questions. So feel free to connect with me online or leave a review if this resonated with you. And as always, until next time, keep learning with purpose, keep teaching with heart, and keep turning tasks into transformation.